Caitlin Clark was not someone who liked to stay quiet when things got tough. She had grown up watching her mother, Melania, handle life with grace and strength. Caitlin admired her mom deeply, and she always promised herself that she would protect her no matter what. Little did she know, this promise would soon be put to the ultimate test. It all started on a regular Tuesday afternoon. Caitlin was sitting in her cozy apartment, scrolling through social media while sipping a cup of coffee. Her phone buzzed, constantly with notifications, but one particular post caught her attention. It was from none other than Sheryl Swoopes, the legendary basketball player whose name everyone knew. At first glance, it seemed like just another update, but as Caitlin read further, her heart sank. The post wasn't about sports or achievements. It was an attack aimed directly at her mother, Melania. Sheryl's words were sharp and cutting. She accused Melania of being dishonest, questioned her character, and even threw in a few sarcastic remarks for good measure. Caitlin couldn't believe what she was reading. Her hands trembled as she scrolled down to see hundreds of comments beneath the post. Some people agreed with Sheryl while others defended Melania, but most were simply entertained by the drama unfolding online. For Caitlin, however, this wasn't entertainment. It was personal. She felt anger bubbling inside her chest. How dare Sheryl say such things about her mom? Melania had never done anything to deserve this kind of treatment. Caitlin knew her mother well. She was kind, hardworking, and always tried to see the best in people. This sudden ambush felt unfair, almost cruel. Caitlin clenched her fists, thinking about how hurt her mom must feel if she ever saw this post. But then, something shifted inside her. Anger turned into determination. If Sheryl wanted a fight, Caitlin was ready to give her one. Without wasting another second, Caitlin grabbed her phone and typed out a response. "Don't you dare disrespect my mom," she wrote. Her message was short, clear, and full of authority. She hit send before she could overthink it. Within minutes, her reply appeared under Sheryl's post. At first, there was silence. Then, the floodgates opened. People began reacting to Caitlin's comment, some cheering her on, others criticizing her for stepping into the fray. But Caitlin didn't care. All that mattered was standing up for her family. What happened next took everyone by surprise. Instead of ignoring Caitlin or backing off, Sheryl doubled down. She fired back with another comment, this time addressing Caitlin directly. "Oh, so now the daughter wants to play hero?" Sheryl wrote, her tone dripping with mockery. "Maybe you should focus less on defending your mom and more on fixing whatever issues made her act this way." The comment stung, but Caitlin refused to let it break her. In fact, it only made her more determined. Over the next few hours, Caitlin crafted a series of replies, each one carefully thought out. She avoided using harsh language, choosing instead to highlight facts and logic. For example, she pointed out inconsistencies in Sheryl's accusations, showing how they lacked evidence. She also reminded Sheryl that attacking someone's family was low, even for someone with a big ego like hers. As the argument continued, Caitlin noticed something interesting. While Sheryl's comments grew louder and angrier, Caitlin remained calm and composed. This contrast didn't go unnoticed by their audience. Many people started siding with Caitlin, praising her for handling the situation maturely. Even those who initially supported Sheryl began questioning her motives. Was she really trying to make a point, or was she just looking for attention? By the end of the day, Caitlin's phone was buzzing nonstop. Friends, family members, and even strangers reached out to offer support. Some sent messages of encouragement, while others shared stories of how they too had faced similar situations. One friend called her specifically to say, "You're doing great, Caitlin, don't let her get to you." Those words meant a lot to Caitlin. They reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight. That night, as Caitlin lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she replayed the events of the day in her mind. She knew this was far from over. Sheryl wasn't the type to back down easily, and Caitlin understood that she needed to prepare herself for round 2. But despite the uncertainty ahead, Caitlin felt a strange sense of pride. She had stood up for her mom, something she had always promised to do. And though the battle was far from won, she had already proven one thing. She wasn't afraid to face giants. Little did Caitlin know, this confrontation would grow bigger than she ever imagined. What started as a simple defense of her mother would soon spiral into a public feud that captured the world's attention. But for now, Caitlin focused on one thing: staying true to herself. No matter what Sheryl threw her way, Caitlin vowed to remain calm, collected, and unwavering. After all, she wasn't just fighting for her mom, she was fighting for respect, justice, and the truth. And so, as the sun rose the next morning, Caitlin woke up ready to face whatever came her way. She didn't know exactly how this story would end, but one thing was certain: she was going to give it everything she had. As the days passed, the feud between Caitlin Clark and Sheryl Swoopes only intensified. What had started as a single post and a handful of comments quickly escalated into a full-blown online war. Social media platforms buzzed with activity as people took sides, debated endlessly, and speculated about what might happen next. For Caitlin, this was no longer just about defending her mother. It had become a test of endurance, strategy, and character. Sheryl seemed determined to keep the spotlight on herself. She posted daily updates, each one more inflammatory than the last. Sometimes she mocked Caitlin's responses, calling them childish or naive. Other times she doubled down on her original accusations against Melania, twisting facts to fit her narrative. Her confidence bordered on arrogance, and many began to wonder if she truly believed she was untouchable. After all, Sheryl Swoopes wasn't just any celebrity. She was a household name, a trailblazer in women's basketball, and someone who had spent decades building an image of invincibility. To some, it felt like she viewed this whole situation as a game, one where she held all the cards. But Caitlin refused to play by Sheryl's rules. Instead of reacting impulsively or letting emotions dictate her actions, Caitlin adopted a methodical approach. Every comment she made was deliberate, every word chosen carefully. She knew that responding with anger or insults would only give Sheryl ammunition to use against her. So instead, Caitlin focused on dismantling Sheryl's arguments piece by piece. When Sheryl accused Melania of dishonesty, Caitlin countered with concrete examples of her mother's integrity. When Sheryl dismissed Caitlin's efforts as amateurish, Caitlin highlighted moments from her own life where she had proven skeptics wrong. Slowly but surely, Caitlin began chipping away at Sheryl's credibility. One particularly powerful moment came when Caitlin shared a heartfelt story about her childhood. In a lengthy Instagram post, she described how her mother, Melania, had worked tirelessly to provide for their family, despite facing countless challenges. She talked about late nights spent helping Caitlin with homework, early mornings preparing meals, and endless sacrifices made without complaint. The post included old photos of Caitlin and Melania together, smiling faces frozen in time, radiating love and warmth. It was impossible not to be moved by the sincerity of Caitlin's words. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people flooded Caitlin's comments section with messages of support. Some shared their own stories of strong mothers who had shaped their lives. Others praised Caitlin for using her platform to honor her mom in such a meaningful way. Even those who hadn't initially taken Caitlin's side found themselves reconsidering after reading her post. It humanized Melania in a way that Sheryl's attacks never could. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Where once Sheryl had dominated the conversation, Caitlin now stood firmly at the center of it. Meanwhile, Sheryl struggled to regain control. Her attempts to discredit Caitlin grew increasingly desperate. In one live video, she accused Caitlin of orchestrating a smear campaign designed to tarnish her reputation. "She thinks she can take me down," Sheryl declared, her voice rising with indignation. "But let me tell you something. I've been through worse than this little girl." Her words backfired spectacularly. Rather than intimidating Caitlin, they only fueled public sympathy for her. Many viewers saw Sheryl's rant as evidence of her insecurity, a sign that she was losing ground in the battle of wits. Critics also pointed out the hypocrisy of her accusations. If anyone was guilty of smearing someone's reputation, it was Sheryl herself, whose initial attack on Melania had sparked the entire feud. Caitlin, meanwhile, remained calm and composed. She didn't respond to Sheryl's claims directly. Instead, she continued sharing content that showcased her values and priorities. One day she posted a video discussing the importance of kindness and respect in public discourse. Another day, she partnered with a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting single mothers, drawing parallels between their mission and her own experiences growing up. Each move reinforced the idea that Caitlin was fighting for something bigger than herself, a cause rooted in fairness, empathy, and justice. Behind the scenes, Caitlin leaned heavily on her support system. Her closest friends and family members rallied around her, offering advice and encouragement whenever she needed it. Her father often reminded her to stay grounded, saying, "Remember why you're doing this. Don't lose sight of your purpose." His words echoed in Caitlin's mind every time doubt crept in. There were moments when she wondered if this fight was worth it, if the stress and scrutiny were too high a price to pay. But then she thought of her mother, sitting quietly at home watching everything unfold without saying a word. That image kept Caitlin going. She couldn't, and wouldn't, let Sheryl win. As the feud dragged on, it became clear that this was more than just a clash of personalities. It was a battle of ideologies. On one side was Sheryl, representing ego, entitlement, and a refusal to admit fault. On the other was Caitlin, embodying resilience, authenticity, and a commitment to standing up for what's right. People began seeing the feud as symbolic of larger societal issues, the tension between privilege and accountability, fame and responsibility, power and humility. By the end of the second week, Caitlin's star had risen significantly. Media outlets covered her story extensively, portraying her as the underdog taking on a giant. Influencers and activists joined the conversation, amplifying her message and lending their voices to her cause. Even rival athletes weighed in, praising Caitlin for her courage and composure. Meanwhile, Sheryl's reputation continued to crumble. Once hailed as a role model, she now faced criticism for her behavior. Calls for accountability grew louder, with many questioning whether icons like her should face consequences for their actions. Still, Caitlin knew better than to celebrate prematurely. She understood that battles like these weren't won overnight. They required patience, perseverance, and unwavering focus. As she prepared for the next phase of the feud, she reminded herself of the lessons she had learned along the way. Stay classy, stay true, and above all, never stop fighting for what matters most. With renewed determination, Caitlin stepped into the third act of this drama, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. She didn't know exactly how things would unfold, but one thing was certain. She was no longer just defending her mother. She was proving to the world that strength doesn't come from tearing others down. It comes from lifting yourself up, no matter how hard the odds may seem. As the feud between Caitlin Clark and Sheryl Swoopes entered its third phase, the stakes grew higher than ever. What had begun as a personal clash was now a full-blown cultural moment, drawing attention from people across the globe. Social media timelines were flooded with hashtags like Team Caitlin and the Justice for Melania, while news outlets scrambled to cover every twist and turn. The world was watching, and both women knew that their next moves would define how history remembered them. Caitlin understood that simply responding to Sheryl's attacks on social media wasn't enough anymore. She needed to take the fight to a new level, one where facts spoke louder than insults. With careful planning, she decided to shift her strategy. Instead of engaging in endless back-and-forth arguments online, Caitlin began using her platform to expose inconsistencies and questionable behavior in Sheryl's past. It was time to show the world who Sheryl Swoopes really was behind the polished image. Her first major move came when she released a series of posts highlighting instances where Sheryl had clashed with younger athletes during interviews or public appearances. These moments weren't widely known because they happened years ago, but Caitlin dug them up and presented them alongside quotes from those involved. One particularly damning example featured Sheryl dismissing a rookie player's achievements by saying, "You'll need more than one good season to earn my respect." The comment went viral almost instantly, sparking outrage among fans who felt it undermined the efforts of young athletes trying to make their mark. To add fuel to the fire, Caitlin shared an old video clip of Sheryl speaking at a panel discussion about mentorship in sports. In the footage, Sheryl made condescending remarks about inexperienced players, implying that they lacked discipline and work ethic compared to her generation. The irony wasn't lost on viewers. Here was someone claiming to be a trailblazer for women's basketball, yet openly belittling those coming up behind her. Commentators quickly pointed out the hypocrisy, questioning whether Sheryl truly deserved the pedestal she stood on. While Caitlyn worked tirelessly to dismantle Sheryl's carefully curated persona, Sheryl herself seemed blindsided by the sudden wave of criticism. At first, she dismissed the backlash as irrelevant, insisting that her critics were misinterpreting her words. But as more evidence surfaced, it became harder for her to deny the pattern of dismissive and elitist behavior. Her attempts to deflect responsibility only dug her deeper into trouble. During a live stream, she tried to justify her comments by saying, "I call it like I see it. If these kids can't handle constructive criticism, maybe they shouldn't be in the spotlight." Unsurprisingly, this response did little to win over skeptics. Many interpreted her defense as further proof of her arrogance and unwillingness to adapt. Critics argued that being a role model meant lifting others up, not tearing them down under the guise of constructive criticism. Some even accused Sheryl of clinging to outdated ideals that no longer fit the modern era of inclusivity and empowerment in sports. As the tide turned against her, Sheryl found herself isolated, with fewer allies willing to publicly defend her actions. Meanwhile, Caitlyn continued to gain momentum. Her ability to stay composed and focused earned her widespread admiration. People marveled at how she managed to counter Sheryl's attacks without stooping to her level. Unlike Sheryl, whose responses often came across as defensive and erratic, Caitlyn maintained a calm demeanor that resonated deeply with audiences. Even neutral observers couldn't help but admire her poise under pressure. One turning point came when Caitlyn appeared on a popular morning talk show to discuss the feud. Hosted by a well-respected journalist known for asking tough questions, the interview gave Caitlyn an opportunity to present her side of the story in a structured and thoughtful way. When asked why she chose to confront Sheryl so publicly, Caitlyn responded with grace and honesty. "This isn't about me versus Sheryl," she said. "It's about standing up for my mom and showing the world that nobody, no matter how famous, should get away with bullying or disrespecting others." Her words struck a chord with viewers. By framing the issue as a broader conversation about accountability and fairness, Caitlyn elevated the debate beyond petty squabbles. Suddenly, the feud wasn't just about two individuals. It represented larger themes of justice, integrity, and the power dynamics at play in public discourse. People began discussing the importance of calling out bad behavior, regardless of who was involved. Influencers, activists, and thought leaders chimed in, praising Caitlyn for using her voice to advocate for meaningful change. Sheryl, however, struggled to keep pace. Her usual charm and charisma failed to sway public opinion in her favor. Each attempt to reassert dominance only highlighted her growing desperation. For instance, she launched a podcast episode titled "The Truth About Caitlyn Clark," hoping to discredit her opponent once and for all. But instead of presenting credible evidence, the episode devolved into a rant filled with baseless accusations and thinly veiled insults. Listeners tuned out in droves, leaving Sheryl looking more out of touch than ever. As the days passed, Caitlyn's influence expanded far beyond social media. Brands took notice of her rising popularity and began reaching out with partnership offers. One company specializing in athletic wear approached her with a proposal to collaborate on a line of merchandise designed to empower women. Another organization invited her to speak at a conference about leadership and resilience. Caitlyn accepted these opportunities not just for personal gain, but also as a way to amplify her message. She saw them as platforms to inspire others to stand up for themselves and their loved ones, just as she had done. Behind the scenes, Caitlyn remained grounded despite her growing fame. She leaned heavily on her family and close friends for support, reminding herself daily of why she started this fight in the first place. Her mother, Melania, continued to serve as her anchor, a source of strength and wisdom that kept her motivated through the toughest moments. Whenever doubts crept in, Caitlyn would think of her mom sitting quietly at home, enduring the ordeal with quiet dignity. That image fueled her determination to see things through until the end. By the time the third week rolled around, the narrative had shifted dramatically. Sheryl's legacy was under siege, with critics dissecting every aspect of her career and personality. Former teammates and colleagues came forward with stories of their own, painting a picture of someone who could be both inspiring and intimidating depending on the situation. While some defended her contributions to women's basketball, others questioned whether her accomplishments excused her recent behavior. The debate raged on, dividing opinion, but ultimately overshadowing Sheryl's achievements. On the other hand, Caitlyn emerged as a beacon of hope and resilience. Her unwavering commitment to protecting her mother and advocating for fairness earned her legions of supporters. Fans praised her for embodying the qualities of a true leader: empathy, courage, and authenticity. Even those who initially doubted her intentions found themselves won over by her sincerity and determination. As Caitlyn prepared for the next phase of the feud, she reflected on how much she had grown throughout the process. This wasn't just about winning an argument anymore. It was about proving that kindness and integrity could triumph over arrogance and cruelty. With renewed purpose, Caitlyn stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She didn't know exactly how the story would end, but she knew one thing for certain. She was fighting for something bigger than herself. And that knowledge gave her the strength to keep going, no matter what. As the feud between Caitlin Clark and Sheryl Swoopes entered its fourth phase, the battle had transformed from a personal dispute into a cultural reckoning. The world was no longer just watching, they were participating. Social media threads buzzed with heated debates, late-night talk shows dissected every move, and hashtags like #Stand with Caitlyn and accountability for Sheryl dominated trending lists. For Caitlyn, this wasn't just about her mother anymore. It had become a movement, a rallying cry for fairness, respect, and justice. Caitlyn knew that to truly tip the scales in her favor, she needed to take the fight beyond social media. While platforms like Twitter and Instagram had been instrumental in amplifying her voice, they also came with limitations. Arguments could easily spiral into chaos, trolls could derail conversations, and important messages risked getting buried under endless noise. To ensure her message reached the widest possible audience, Caitlyn decided to leverage traditional media outlets, places where facts mattered more than sound bites. Her first major step was granting an exclusive interview to one of the most respected journalists in the industry. The journalist, known for asking tough yet fair questions, provided Caitlyn with a platform to share her story in depth. Sitting across from the interviewer, Caitlyn spoke candidly about her journey so far. She talked about growing up with her mother, Melania, and how much her mom meant to her. Her voice trembled slightly as she recalled the day she stumbled upon Sheryl's initial attack against Melania. "It felt like someone punching me in the gut," Caitlyn admitted. "My mom doesn't deserve this kind of treatment. Not from anyone." But Caitlyn didn't stop there. She went on to explain why she believed standing up to Sheryl was about more than just family loyalty. "This is about setting an example," she said firmly. "If we let people get away with bullying or belittling others because of their fame or status, then what does that say about us as a society? We have to hold everyone accountable, no exceptions." The interview struck a chord with viewers. Unlike the snarky back-and-forth exchanges on social media, this conversation allowed people to see Caitlyn as a multi-dimensional person, someone driven by love, values, and a desire to make a difference. Her words resonated deeply, particularly among women who felt inspired by her courage to challenge a powerful figure like Sheryl Swoopes. By the end of the segment, calls poured into the show praising Caitlyn for her poise and conviction. Even critics who had previously dismissed her as just another internet warrior found themselves reconsidering their stance. Meanwhile, Sheryl struggled to regain control of the narrative. Her attempts to counter Caitlyn's growing popularity often came across as defensive and disjointed. During a separate interview, she tried to paint herself as the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by Caitlyn. "I'm being attacked for speaking my mind," Sheryl argued, her tone sharp and accusatory. "People are twisting my words and using them against me." But instead of garnering sympathy, her comments only reinforced perceptions of her as out of touch and unwilling to accept responsibility. Viewers noted the stark contrast between her aggressive demeanor and Caitlyn's calm composure. Where Caitlyn focused on solutions and accountability, Sheryl seemed fixated on deflecting blame. The divide between the two women couldn't have been clearer. Sensing an opportunity to further expose Sheryl's flaws, Caitlyn collaborated with content creators and investigative journalists to produce a series of videos and articles shedding light on Sheryl's past controversies. These pieces weren't designed to shame her outright, but rather to provide context for her current behavior. One video, titled "The Untold Story of Sheryl Swoopes," compiled archival footage, interviews, and expert analysis to explore moments in Sheryl's career where her actions had raised eyebrows. For instance, the video highlighted a lawsuit filed years ago by a former employee accusing Sheryl of creating a hostile work environment. Though the case was settled out of court, the details painted a troubling picture of someone who prioritized her ego over teamwork. Another article examined Sheryl's public statements over the years, pointing out patterns of dismissiveness toward younger generations. Quotes from speeches and interviews revealed a consistent theme. Sheryl often framed herself as the ultimate authority on success, implying that those who disagreed with her simply lacked experience or discipline. Critics seized on these findings, arguing that such attitudes contributed to the toxic culture surrounding celebrity icons who refused to adapt to changing times. While Sheryl scrambled to address these revelations, Caitlyn doubled down on her mission to inspire change. She partnered with organizations dedicated to combating online harassment and supporting victims of bullying. Together, they launched a campaign called Stand Strong, aimed at empowering individuals to speak up when faced with injustice. Through workshops, webinars, and social media challenges, Caitlyn encouraged people to share their own stories of resilience and solidarity. Thousands participated, flooding timelines with messages of hope and encouragement. One participant, a young athlete named Maya, shared a heartfelt post about how Caitlyn's courage had inspired her to confront a coach who had repeatedly belittled her during practice. "Before, I thought I had to stay quiet because he was the authority," Maya wrote. "But seeing Caitlyn stand up for her mom made me realize that silence isn't always strength. Sometimes you have to fight back, even if it scares you." Stories like Maya's reinforced Caitlyn's belief that this feud was about something bigger than herself. Every testimonial, every supportive comment, and every act of bravery fueled her determination to keep pushing forward. She began receiving letters and emails from strangers thanking her for giving them the courage to face their own battles. Some even sent gifts, a bouquet of flowers here, a handwritten note there, as tokens of gratitude. Caitlyn cherished each, one tucking them away as reminders of why she started this fight in the first place. Despite her growing influence, Caitlyn remained acutely aware of the toll the feud was taking on her mental health. The constant scrutiny, endless notifications, and pressure to maintain her composure weighed heavily on her. There were nights when she lay awake, replaying conversations in her head and wondering if she'd made the right choices. But whenever doubt crept in, she turned to her support system, her family, friends, and mentors, who reminded her of the importance of staying true to her values. "You're not doing this alone," her father told her during one particularly difficult moment. "You've got an entire community behind you. Focus on the impact you're making, not the noise around you." His words grounded her, helping her push through the toughest days. Caitlyn also leaned on her mother, Melania, whose quiet strength continued to inspire her. Despite the harsh spotlight, Melania never complained or sought attention. Instead, she offered gentle advice and unwavering support, reminding Caitlyn that love and kindness would always triumph over cruelty and arrogance. As the fourth week drew to a close, the momentum shifted decisively in Caitlyn's favor. Sponsors began distancing themselves from Sheryl, citing concerns about her public image. Meanwhile, Caitlyn inked new deals with brands eager to align themselves with her message of empowerment and authenticity. Her name became synonymous with resilience, and her story served as a testament to the power of standing up for what's right. even against seemingly insurmountable odds. For Sheryl, the writing was on the wall. Once celebrated as a trailblazer, she now faced mounting criticism for her inability to adapt and grow. Calls for accountability grew louder, with many questioning whether icons like her should be held to higher standards. Some even suggested that her legacy might forever be tarnished by her recent actions. Caitlin, however, emerged stronger than ever. She had proven that true victory wasn't about destroying your opponent. It was about inspiring others to rise above adversity. She prepared for the final chapter of this saga. Caitlin reflected on how much she had grown throughout the process. This journey had tested her in ways she never imagined, but it had also revealed her capacity for leadership, compassion, and change. With renewed purpose, Caitlin stepped into the 5th phase of the feud, ready to deliver the knockout punch. She didn't know exactly how things would unfold, but one thing was certain. She was fighting not just for her family, but for a better, kinder world. And that knowledge gave her the strength to face whatever came next. By the time the feud between Caitlin Clark and Sheryl Swoopes reached its 5th phase, it had become clear that this was more than just a personal conflict. It was a defining moment in public discourse. The world watched intently as two vastly different approaches to power and accountability clashed head-on. For Caitlin, every move she made was calculated, rooted in purpose and conviction. For Sheryl, each misstep seemed to dig her deeper into a hole of her own making. As the stakes grew higher, the final showdown loomed closer. Caitlin knew that if she wanted to bring closure to this chapter, she needed to deliver a decisive blow, one that would not only dismantle Sheryl's defenses, but also cement her own legacy as someone who stood for truth and justice. She decided to take the fight directly to Sheryl in a way that couldn't be ignored. Rather than relying solely on social media or interviews, Caitlin opted for a bold and unconventional approach. A live-streamed town hall event titled Truth and Accountability. The idea came to her during one of her late-night brainstorming sessions. She envisioned an open forum where people could ask questions, share their perspectives, and hold public figures accountable for their actions. It wasn't just about confronting Sheryl. It was about creating a space for honest dialogue and reflection. With the help of her team, Caitlin organized the event within days, inviting journalists, activists, and ordinary citizens to participate. She even extended an invitation to Sheryl herself, though she doubted the basketball legend would accept. On the day of the event, anticipation ran high. Thousands tuned in from around the globe, eager to see what Caitlin had planned. The stage was set simply, a small desk with a microphone surrounded by screens displaying messages of support from viewers. Dressed in a crisp white blazer symbolizing clarity and integrity, Caitlin walked onto the virtual platform with confidence. Her opening remarks set the tone for the evening. "Tonight isn't about me versus Sheryl," Caitlin began, her voice steady and resolute. "It's about asking ourselves what kind of world we want to live in. Do we want a world where fame shields people from accountability? Or do we want a world where everyone, no matter how powerful, is held to the same standards of respect and decency?" Her words resonated deeply with the audience. Many nodded along in agreement, while others typed supportive comments in the chat. Caitlin then transitioned into addressing specific issues raised throughout the feud. She presented evidence of Sheryl's past controversies, weaving them into a larger narrative about privilege and responsibility. Each point she made was backed by facts, leaving little room for denial or deflection. One of the most impactful moments came when Caitlin shared testimonials from individuals who claimed they had been mistreated by Sheryl over the years. A former assistant recounted how Sheryl had publicly humiliated her during a work meeting, reducing her to tears. Another person described feeling belittled and dismissed after seeking mentorship from Sheryl early in their career. These stories painted a troubling picture of someone whose ego often overshadowed their humanity. Sheryl, predictably, did not attend the town hall. Instead, she issued a written statement through her lawyer, accusing Caitlin of orchestrating a witch hunt designed to ruin her reputation. But rather than intimidating Caitlin, the statement only fueled public outrage. Viewers saw it as further proof of Sheryl's refusal to engage in meaningful conversation or take responsibility for her actions. By contrast, Caitlyn's willingness to face scrutiny head-on earned her even more admiration. As the town hall progressed, Caitlyn shifted gears, using the opportunity to highlight positive examples of leadership and accountability. She invited several guests to join her virtually, including activists, educators, and athletes who had successfully navigated challenges while staying true to their values. One guest, a retired WNBA player, spoke passionately about the importance of lifting others up instead of tearing them down. "We rise together," she said, echoing sentiments Caitlyn had expressed throughout the feud. "That's how real progress happens." The town hall concluded with a powerful call to action. Caitlyn urged viewers to reflect on their own lives and consider how they could contribute to a culture of kindness and fairness. She announced the launch of a new initiative called Rise Together, aimed at fostering mentorship and collaboration among young athletes. The program would provide resources, workshops, and networking opportunities to help aspiring players navigate the challenges of competitive sports without sacrificing their dignity or self-worth. While Caitlyn's star continued to rise, Sheryl's situation grew increasingly dire. The backlash from the town hall proved too much for her sponsors to ignore. Within days, several major brands severed ties with her, citing concerns about her alignment with their values. Others suspended partnerships, pending further investigation. Even longtime fans began distancing themselves, questioning whether Sheryl's contributions to women's basketball outweighed her recent behavior. Desperate to salvage her image, Sheryl attempted a last-ditch effort to reclaim control. She appeared on a popular podcast known for giving controversial figures a platform to explain themselves. However, the interview backfired spectacularly. When pressed about the allegations against her, Sheryl became defensive and evasive, refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing. At one point, she snapped at the host, accusing him of bias and unfair treatment. Listeners tuned out in droves, leaving her looking more isolated than ever. Behind the scenes, Caitlyn remained focused and grounded. Despite the mounting pressure, she refused to let success go to her head. She leaned heavily on her family for support, particularly her mother, Melania, whose quiet strength continued to inspire her. They often spent evenings together, reflecting on how far they had come since the initial attack. Melania reminded Caitlyn that the journey wasn't just about winning. It was about staying true to herself and making a difference in the world. "I'm so proud of you," Melania told her one night, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've shown everyone what it means to stand up for what's right no matter how hard it gets." Caitlyn hugged her tightly, feeling a surge of gratitude. No matter what happened next, she knew she had already achieved something extraordinary. She had transformed a personal vendetta into a movement for change, inspiring countless people to speak up against injustice and bullying. Her story served as a reminder that courage and compassion could triumph over arrogance and cruelty. The fifth week drew to a close, Caitlyn prepared for the final act of this saga. She didn't know exactly how things would end, but she felt a sense of peace knowing she had done everything in her power to protect her family and advocate for fairness. The battle had tested her in ways she never imagined, but it had also revealed her capacity for resilience, empathy, and leadership. With renewed determination, Caitlyn stepped forward, ready to deliver the closing chapter of this unforgettable story. She didn't need to destroy Sheryl to win. All she needed was to stay true to her values and trust that the truth would prevail. And as she looked ahead to the future, she knew one thing for certain: she was fighting for something bigger than herself. That knowledge gave her the strength to face whatever came next and emerge victorious. The sixth and final phase of the feud between Caitlyn Clark and Sheryl Swoopes marked the culmination of a journey that had captivated millions around the world. The stakes were higher than ever, and both women found themselves at a crossroads, one defined by redemption or ruin, the other by triumph and transformation. For Caitlyn, this was not just about wrapping up a personal battle. It was about cementing her legacy as someone who stood for integrity, family, and justice. And for Sheryl, it was a desperate attempt to salvage what remained of her once unassailable reputation. Caitlin's closing move came in the form of a live television interview on one of the most prestigious news programs in the country. This wasn't just another appearance. It was her moment to speak directly to the nation, unfiltered and uninterrupted. The show's host, known for their incisive yet respectful questioning, gave Caitlin the platform she needed to articulate her thoughts clearly and powerfully. Sitting across from the interviewer, Caitlin exuded calm confidence, dressed in a navy blue blazer paired with a simple pearl necklace, a nod to her mother's timeless elegance. When asked how she felt about the entire ordeal, Caitlin paused before responding. Her voice was steady but carried an emotional weight that resonated deeply with viewers. "This has been one of the hardest things I've ever faced," she admitted. "But through it all, I've learned so much. Not just about myself, but about the kind of person I want to be. My mom taught me to always stand up for what's right even when it's scary. That lesson has guided me every step of the way." She went on to address Sheryl directly, speaking with a maturity that belied her age. "Sheryl, you can attack me all you want, but leave my family out of it. Your attempts to intimidate us have failed. Maybe it's time you look in the mirror and ask yourself why you feel the need to tear others down instead of lifting them up." Her words weren't bitter or vengeful. They were measured, almost compassionate, offering Sheryl a chance to reflect on her actions. The interview quickly became a viral sensation. Clips of Caitlin's remarks spread across social media platforms, sparking discussions about accountability, humility, and the responsibilities that come with fame. Many praised her for addressing Sheryl without resorting to cruelty, proving that strength doesn't require tearing someone else apart. Others highlighted the contrast between Caitlin's composed demeanor and Sheryl's increasingly erratic behavior, further solidifying public opinion in Caitlin's favor. Sheryl, however, seemed unable or unwilling to heed the wake-up call. In a last-ditch effort to regain control of the narrative, she released a lengthy statement on her official website. Titled, "Setting the Record Straight," the post attempted to justify her past actions while accusing Caitlin of orchestrating a smear campaign. But rather than convincing anyone of her innocence, the statement only reinforced perceptions of her as defensive and disconnected from reality. Critics pointed out glaring contradictions in her arguments, while supporters dwindled further. 2. Make matters worse, Sheryl's tone struck many as condescending and dismissive. She referred to Caitlin as just a kid trying to play hero, and accused her of using the situation to gain attention. These comments backfired spectacularly, drawing widespread condemnation. Even those who had previously defended Sheryl began distancing themselves, calling her attitude out of touch and unnecessarily cruel. By now it was clear that Sheryl's refusal to acknowledge her mistakes had sealed her fate. Meanwhile, Caitlin continued to rise above the fray. Rather than engaging in petty retaliation, she focused on amplifying her message of empowerment and resilience. She partnered with educational institutions to launch workshops aimed at teaching young people how to navigate conflicts with grace and dignity. One such program, called Rising Strong, combined storytelling, interactive exercises, and mentorship opportunities to equip participants with tools for handling adversity. Thousands signed up within days, eager to learn from Caitlin's example. Her influence extended beyond activism. Brands clamored to work with her, recognizing the authenticity and positivity she brought to the table. A major athletic apparel company approached her with a proposal to design a line of products celebrating underdog stories. Another organization invited her to serve as the keynote speaker at their annual leadership conference. Caitlin accepted these opportunities not for personal gain, but as a way to inspire others to embrace challenges and fight for what they believe in. Behind the scenes, Caitlin leaned heavily on her support system. Her family, particularly her mother, Melania, remained her rock throughout the process. They celebrated small victories together, like when a sponsor dropped Sheryl, and provided comfort during moments of doubt. Caitlin often reminded herself of why she started this fight, to protect her mom and prove that kindness and courage could overcome arrogance and cruelty. Those reminders kept her grounded, even as the world showered her with praise. As the dust settled, Caitlin reflected on everything she had endured: the sleepless nights, the endless notifications, the pressure to stay composed. It had all taken a toll. But looking back, she realized how much she had grown. She had discovered strengths she didn't know she possessed, forged connections, with strangers turned allies, and inspired countless people to stand up for themselves and their loved ones. Most importantly, she had stayed true to her values, refusing to compromise her integrity for the sake of winning. For Sheryl, the outcome was starkly different. Once hailed as a trailblazer, she now faced mounting criticism for her inability to adapt and grow. Calls for accountability grew louder, with many arguing that icons like her should be held to higher standards. Some even suggested that her legacy might forever be tarnished by her recent behavior. While a few loyal fans continued to defend her, the majority agreed that she had squandered her opportunity to evolve into a better version of herself. In the end, Caitlyn emerged victorious, not because she destroyed Sheryl, but because she inspired change. She proved that standing up for what's right, even against impossible odds, can lead to meaningful progress. Her story became a testament to the power of resilience, empathy, and authenticity. It reminded people that true strength lies not in domination but in lifting others up, especially when they need it most. Months later, Caitlyn sat on her couch scrolling through social media, reflecting on how far she had come. She stumbled upon a post from a young girl who had attended one of her workshops. "Thank you, Caitlyn, for showing me that I don't have to be afraid to stand up for myself," the caption read. Beneath it was a photo of the girl smiling confidently, holding a certificate of completion from the Rising Strong program. Caitlyn smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what mattered most, not the headlines, the accolades, or the sponsors, but the lives she had touched along the way. As she closed her laptop and leaned back, she thought about the future. There would undoubtedly be new challenges ahead, but she felt ready to face them head-on. After all, she had already proven to herself and to the world that no obstacle was insurmountable when you stood by your principles. And so, Caitlyn Clark walked away from the feud stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. She had fought, not just for her family, but for a better, kinder world. Her journey served as a beacon of hope for anyone facing adversity, reminding them that courage and compassion could triumph over arrogance and cruelty. Whatever the future held, Caitlyn knew one thing for certain: she would continue rising strong, inspiring others to do the same.